The damp smell of soil after watering and the soft click of the feeder chain in the hedge are the kind of things that make you notice how little the Eurasian bullfinch gives away. It is not one of those bright, bold garden birds that just hangs out in the open. This one keeps to cover. It slips behind leaves, shows you a flash of color, then vanishes again. And that is exactly why it matters. If a bird like that keeps coming back, keeps feeding, keeps trusting the space, you are not guessing anymore. You are watching what it feels safe enough to do. On a good morning, you can stand there with your hands still and your shoulders loose, and it may keep its head down at the feeder. On a difficult day, the same few steps across the yard can change everything. Because you did. Your stride gets tighter, your shoulders rise, your breathing gets shallower. Even if you try to act normal, the body has already started talking. And the bird hears that in the only way it can. Its flight initiation distance is not fixed. It gets recalculated in real time from the way you move, the way you turn, the way your gaze lands. A direct stare, even for a second too long, can be enough to send it back into the hedge. A softer, unfixed gaze, that's different. So when the Eurasian bullfinch stays, you start wondering what kind of day you're really carrying into the garden, don't you? If that kind of small truth pulls you in, subscribe, because the next moment gets even more revealing. So you stay by the feeder a little longer, with your hands quiet and your weight settled into your feet, and the bird has time to decide. That is the part people miss. They think distance is the whole story. It isn't. With this species, the movement itself matters more than the number of steps. A small tightening in your shoulders, a quick turn of your head, the way your eyes lock onto it through the glass, all of that changes the picture. The bullfinch is watching cover, but it is also watching you, in the plain physical sense of watching what your body is doing. On a good day, you can look past it, not through it. Your gaze stays loose, your face stays soft. You might hear the feeder give a tiny tap against the hook, or the dry rattle of seed shifting inside the tray, and the bird keeps feeding as if the yard still belongs to the same quiet rhythm it knew a moment ago. That is unperformed calm. Nothing dramatic, just enough stillness that it doesn't feel staged. On a difficult day, the difference shows up fast. You mean to be patient, but your stance goes rigid anyway. Your neck pulls forward, your attention narrows. And then the bird does what shy birds do. It stops, gives you one sharp look, and slips back toward the hedge. What is strange is how little it takes. Sometimes the only change is your gaze, and the whole yard answers it. And once you notice that, you start noticing the smaller things around it too. The scrape of your shoe on wet stone. Your hand tightens around the watering can when you are tired. The slight lean of your shoulders when your mind is somewhere else. None of that feels like much from the inside, but to a bird that lives by distance and cover, those tiny changes are part of the whole message. A Eurasian bullfinch does not need a dramatic gesture from you. It only needs the shape of your approach to shift a little. That is why good days and difficult days can look so similar to you and so different to it. On a good day, you move with a kind of loose rhythm. You stop where you mean to stop. You do not keep scanning the branches while you stand there. On a hard day, even your stillness has edges. Your attention jumps. Your body keeps preparing for the next thing. The bird feels that through the flight initiation distance, through the way it keeps one eye on the path and one eye on the hedge. And if you have ever watched the same individual return after a pause, you know the strange part. It can come back faster when you stop trying to get it back. There is something in that unperformed calm that gives the feeder its ordinary shape again. The odd thing is, the moment you try to hold that calm in place, it starts to slip. And that is when the bird changes first. So you keep watching, but not in that tight way that sends everything backward. That is where the Eurasian bullfinch starts to show you something a little harder to name. On a good morning, it may take the seed and never break the rhythm. On a difficult one, it hesitates at the edge of cover, and that hesitation says more than a flush ever could. The body tells the truth first, yours and then its. You can see it in the small details, the angle of your shoulders, the hand that is hovering too high over the tray, the way your gaze catches and sticks instead of resting. Birds notice body orientation long before you think you are doing anything obvious. A direct, square-on stance can feel like a wall to a shy finch. A slight turn, a softened face, a gaze that moves and does not pin. That gives it room. And when the bird stays, that is when the yard changes shape, because the space between you and it stopped feeling loaded. The feeder makes its little metallic sound. A leaf turns. Somewhere near the hedge, the bird gives one quick look, and the white rump flashing away is almost too fast to hold in memory. On days like that, the garden as an honest mirror gets very plain about what you brought into it. And once you see that, you start wondering what else the bird has already been answering before you even stepped fully outside. So you start testing it without really meaning to. You set the watering can down more slowly. You turn your shoulders a little before you take the next step. You look at the feeder, then past it, then back again. And the bird answers each version of you differently. On a good morning, the Eurasian bullfinch may keep feeding while the rake leans against the fence and the little lid on the seed tin clicks shut. On a harder one, the same small sounds seem to tighten the whole scene. That is the part people miss when they talk about distance as if it were fixed. The flight initiation distance is alive to posture, to movement, to the shape of attention. What feels almost rude once you notice it is how little the bird needs. Just a shift in your weight, a hand that pauses too long in midair, a gaze that settles too hard. The body gives itself away in little motions you do not choose, especially when you are tired or carrying something heavy in your head. And the bird is there for all of it, reading the clean and the crooked versions of you with the same patient caution. On calm days, that reading looks almost easy. You stand by the wet path, smell the soil, hear the soft tick of seed against plastic, and the creature stays where it is. That is unperformed calm meeting a wary bird. No performance, no special trick, just enough ease for the moment to stay open. And then there are the other mornings, when you swear you are doing the same thing, only the bird has already decided otherwise, and stays hidden 1 second longer than usual. By now, you have probably noticed that the smallest change in your own movement can shift the whole yard. That is the odd, quiet part of it. The Eurasian bullfinch is not reacting to some grand signal. It is responding to the way you stand with the feeder in your hand, how your weight settles, how your gaze moves before your feet do. On a good day, those things are loose enough that the bird keeps its place and the seed stays in view. On a difficult day, the same path across the stones can feel different because your body is different, even if you never say a word. You can see it most clearly when you stop trying to manage the scene. Then the bird gives you the plain version. It may keep feeding with the hedge behind it and the damp air around it, or it may shift back 1 step and hold there, watching. That is not drama. That is measurement. Small creatures do this all the time because survival depends on it. And once you begin to notice that kind of reading, You start noticing how often the garden gives you your own shape back. The quiet days feel wide, the hard days feel narrow, even before anything has happened. The yard does not invent that difference, it only makes it visible. That is why a shy bird can feel so honest. It leaves you no room to pretend for long. And this morning, when you reached the feeder, it did something you were not expecting at all. And the strange part is, the moment you ease up, the bird gives you more to see. Not all at once. The Eurasian bullfinch does not reward impatience. It simply changes shape in the yard when your own movement softens. You can feel it in the space near the feeder. The body of the bird stays tucked, but it is less ready to vanish. The hedge stops feeling like a border and starts feeling like part of the same quiet room. That is why people who watch birds for a long time keep talking about the same small things: the angle of your head, the way your hand hangs at your side, the tempo of your step when you cross the stones with a damp watering can. None of that sounds important until you see how quickly the flight initiation distance changes when your attention tightens. Then it becomes obvious that the bird is responding to a whole posture, not just a body in a place. On a good day, you almost forget to track it. You hear the seed click against the tray, you smell the wet soil, and the bird keeps feeding with that same quiet, wary steadiness. On a difficult day, the same yard feels thinner, and the creature seems to know before you do that something in you has narrowed. And then, just when you think it is settled, the white rump flashing away catches the light once, and you realize it has only shifted or you can no longer predict it. So now the yard becomes less about whether the bird appears and more about how it appears. On a good morning, it comes out in one shape. Never careless, but settled enough to let the feeder remain part of the same scene as the hedge, the damp fence, the cold handle of the seed scoop in your fingers. On a difficult morning, it comes out in another shape entirely. Lower to cover, shorter pauses, head up sooner. The difference is subtle, but with a shy bird, subtle is the whole language. That is where quiet observation becomes more useful than effort. If you have ever stood there after bad sleep or after a hard conversation, you know how the body gets a little ahead of you. The shoulders set, the breath catches high. Even your stillness becomes busy. The bird does not need an obvious mistake from you. It only needs that slight change in tempo, that narrowing of attention, and suddenly, the feeder no longer feels simple. Research on wary garden birds keeps circling back to that same plain point. Approach is not just distance, it is direction, rhythm, body angle, gaze. And with this finch, the reading can feel almost immediate. You shift, it shifts. You soften, it lingers. Just enough to show that the moment has changed. And when it does linger, when it keeps feeding instead of slipping back, you begin to understand something almost uncomfortable. It is not responding to the calm you want to project, but to the calm you actually have. And that is where the whole thing turns inward a little, even while the bird stays the same wary little creature by the hedge. When it hangs back, it is easy to take that personally. But with a Eurasian bullfinch, distance is not a judgment. It is an assessment, updated moment by moment from what your body is giving off in plain sight. On a good day, the feeder seems to gather the yard together. The damp boards, the seed scent, the thin scrape of branch on branch. And the bird accepts that shape. On a difficult day, the same scene can loosen at the edges. The bird pauses longer. It feeds in shorter bursts. It keeps one root open behind it. That is what makes this species so revealing. Because it is naturally shy, it does not flatter you. A bolder visitor might stay anyway and let you believe your calm is real. This one usually will not. If it keeps feeding while you stand there, that tells you something clean and almost uncomfortable. Your stillness is genuine enough to pass. If it slips back, the answer is just as honest. You begin to feel, after enough mornings, that the yard is answering the version of you that arrives before words do. The one in your shoulders, your breath, your gaze. The one the bird can measure without ever coming close. And then, every so often, on a morning when you were not expecting much from yourself at all, it stays. And that is the morning it finally becomes clear. Not on one of the easy days either. The air is cool enough to sting your fingers on the metal scoop, and the seed smells faintly dusty as it falls into the tray. You come out carrying too much in your head, already feeling that familiar narrowing in your chest. The bird is there in the hedge, half hidden, exactly where a shy one likes to be. You see it, and for a second, you expect the usual distance. But then you stop trying to improve the moment. Your hand drops to your side. Your shoulders let go a little. You look at the feeder, then past it, toward the wet boards darkening by the fence. The Eurasian bullfinch does not come closer in any dramatic way. It simply does not leave. It stays on the tray, lifts one seed, cracks it, reaches for another. The whole yard holds that shape for a few quiet breaths, and in that still pocket of morning, the answer is plain enough. A wary bird does not hand out false comfort. If it keeps feeding, the calm in front of it is real enough for now. That is all, but sometimes all is a bird staying put while the seed tray rocks once and settles. A drop slides from the feeder chain. The hedge goes still again. The yard looks ordinary, and not ordinary at all. If this made you listen to your own mornings a little differently, subscribe and stay with me. And if you've had a bird tell you the truth without coming any nearer, I'd love to hear about it.